You know, about 100 years ago, there was a scholar. His name was A.T. Robertson. I think he was arguably the most influential, that is, Greek grammarian of his day, and if not, we still feel that echoing today, his influence. But A.T. Robertson said this about English translations. He said that the freshness of the strawberry cannot be preserved by any extract. Now, what he means by that, to put it simply, is that there's no thing like the real thing. And his argument is that it doesn't matter how good an English translation is or how skilled the translators are. It is not possible for any single English translation or translation of any language in general. It is not possible for them to pick up every single nuance and exegetical insight that the original text brings. If you're familiar with the term lost in translation, in other words, somewhere between point A and point B, some of the nuance was lost. Well, one of the things that the translators of the New American Standard did is they came up with a neat little trick in order to show you some of the insights of what's going on in the Greek text of the New Testament. They did for the Old Testament as well, but I don't know Hebrew, so I'm mainly going to be focusing on the New Testament. But I made the thumbnail for this video a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It's not that these, these cheat codes or whatever, these secret little tricks are actually a secret. In fact, they put it in the preface of the book. I find it funny that in many ways I think that if you're trying to hide something from someone, just put it in the preface of a book, because nobody ever reads the preface of the book unless you're a weirdo or a nerd, I'm not going to say which one of those I am. But anyway, if you read the preface to the New American Standard, they tell you that there are certain cases or aspects of the Greek language where it's not really possible to accurately translate it into English in one way. So if they were to render that text in the most accurate sense, in many ways it would now become, it would be bad because it wouldn't be good English. So what I'm going to show you today are two specific features of the New American Standard that I really like, that help to bring out nuance of the original languages, and I really think will enrich your Bible study. Now, this is true whether you're using, it doesn't matter what edition of the New American Standard you're using, okay? If you're using the 1977, like I did for years, if you're using the 1995, or if you're using this one, this happens to be a 2020 NASB. And it also goes the same for the Legacy Standard Bible. The Legacy Standard Bible is sort of like, it's basically the 1995 updated in its own, it does its own thing, it branches off. It was sort of a negative reaction to the New American Standard 2020. If you like, I can do a video about that, and why I think that all the hate for the New American Standard 2020 I think it's unjustified. I actually really like the 2020, but that'll be for another video, maybe some other time. But anyway, the thing that I want to show you now are the two aspects to the New American Standard that I really, really like. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, before we get into this, there's something that we need to discuss first, and that is the element of time or tenses, okay? Now, as you can see here, typically in English, there are three tenses, okay? We have the past, the present, and the future. Well, Greek also has these, but what Greek can do that English can't is Greek can add layers of nuance. For example, did something happen in the past but have lasting effects into the future? Or did something just simply happen in the past? Or is something written in such a way that it's as if it's happening in the past, okay? And so on and so forth for each tense. Now, what happens is interesting, is when we're talking about how to best translate these, a lot of times the easiest way that makes sense in English is to translate these verbs as simply as past tense verbs, okay? And in particular, what we're going to look at first is how the New American Standard deals with the imperfective verbs, okay? So what I want you to do is go ahead and look. If you look here, we're in Mark chapter 10, and see how I underlined these two words, began? Well, they're in italics, right? Now, here's a little clue. In the New American Standard, whenever something is in italics, it means that it is not technically in the Greek. However, it is implied, okay? But whenever, in particular, whenever you see the word began that's in italics, that is letting you know that the verb it is translating, that they translated, is imperfective. Now, just to put it simply, the imperfective verbs are imply a repeated or durative action. So, in other words, we see here, we're reading here that, let's see here, Jesus, according to his custom, he once more began to teach them. It's implying that Jesus stood up and taught them for a while, or continued to teach them. And then in verse 2, some Pharisees came up to Jesus, testing him, and began to question him. Same idea. It's giving the implication that they're pestering him, that it's a repeated action. The reason this is significant is because when we're thinking about how the Greeks thought, for the Greeks, time of action wasn't as important as kind of action. In other words, Greeks didn't really care when something happened. Greeks cared rather how something happened. So for them, how an event took place and how it unfolded was far more significant than when it took place. So again, here we see another word, began. So in the house, the disciples began questioning him about this again. Now, again, see how the word, like I said, it's began is in italics. It's implying that the disciples continue to ask him. So the simplest way to think about this is whenever you see the word began in the New American Standard and it's in italics, it's implying a repeated action, okay? And the emphasis is then placed upon that action. So anyway, that's the first one. Okay, the second feature of the New American Standard that we want to look at, the second cheat code, if you will, is how they render the historical present tense. Now, remember how in English I mentioned that we have three tenses, the past, the present, and the future? Well, again, Greek also has these, but it has layers of nuance. But what would happen is that the writers of the Gospels in particular would render something in what's called the historical present tense. In other words, they would write something in the present tense that actually happened in the past. Now, that might sound strange at first when I'm trying to describe this, but think about it. You, when you're having a conversation with your friends and you're telling them a story, do this all the time, and I do too. For example, you might be telling them a story, a conversation you have with a friend, and you go, and I say to him, yada, yada, and then he says to me. Now, say and says are both, you just said them in the present tense, even though you're telling a story that happened in the past. And why did you do that? For emphasis, okay, or vividness. And it's the same way in Greek. The authors of the Gospels in particular, because that's where it's most commonly found, would write something in the present tense, seemingly randomly, to draw emphasis on whatever that action was, okay? And we're going to see that here in the Gospels. So the way the New American Standard chooses to notify you whenever the historical present tense is used is they place an asterisk before the word. So what you can do is simply translate it in your head whenever you see a word that has an asterisk before it, translate it in the present tense instead of the past. So see, these words are underlined in blue. These are all the words in this passage that have an asterisk. So these are historical present tense words, okay? So instead of there came a woman of Samaria to draw water, Jesus said to her, give me a drink. Instead, translate it like this. There comes a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus says to her, give me a drink, for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Therefore, the Samaritan woman says to him, how is it that you, being a Jew, ask me for a drink, since I am a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. Jesus answered and said to her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is who says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. She says to him. So see what's happening here? These words are written in past tense because that makes good English. But in the Greek, they come alive. It's as if Jesus right now is having a conversation with the Samaritan woman as we speak. It's as if time is not an element. And again, this is done for emphasis. This is to draw your attention to the text and what's happening, okay? It's to really bring it out. It's to make it alive. It's as if Jesus right now is talking to the woman at the well. So whenever you see an asterisk before a word, it's telling you that that word is a historical present tense word, okay? Now, another great passage of this is when Jesus leaves John the Baptist after his baptism, and he goes and he gets his first disciples. This is in John chapter 1. So see again that we have the word found, said, said. All of these are historical present tense words, and they have the asterisks there. So again, we could read it. I'll just translate it for you. And this is really easy to do. It's not difficult, okay? The next day, he purposed, that is Jesus, to go into Galilee, and he finds Philip. And Jesus says to him, "Follow me." Now, Philip was from Bethsaida, of the city of Andrew and Peter. And Philip finds Nathanael and says to him, "We have found him of whom Moses and the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Nathanael said to him, "Can any good thing come out of Nazareth?" And Philip says to him, "Come and see." So see how some of these words are not in the historical present and some are. That's because the authors, so in this case, John the Apostle, wants you to focus on the words that are in the historical present because that's where his emphasis is. So his emphasis here, for example, if we look at, let's see, verse 45, okay, Philip finds Nathanael and says to him, "We have found." So see how found is not in the historical present, but said is. It's because he wants you to focus on him telling him about finding Jesus. Okay, finding the one of whom the Moses and the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth. That's where the emphasis is. Okay, so anyway, to summarize these two things that we've been talking about is, number one, the historical present tense signifier in the New American Standard. It will always be marked with an asterisk. Whenever you see that, it is the historical present. The second is the imperfective verb signifier would be began in italics. Now remember, the imperfective, the meaning of that is that it's a repeated or ongoing, not an ongoing, but a repeated action. There's some duration involved in that action. Now I know that's a gross oversimplification of the imperfective. I know that, but I'm trying to explain this to someone who's never studied Greek so that the nuance isn't lost on them. Anyway, I hope this helped you out. Okay, well, I hope that helped you out. I hope you benefited from that. I really love translations are one of those things that I'm really passionate about, especially, and translating in general in the original languages. And anytime there's an example of something that shows nuance and depth, I really hope that this helped you out. I really hope that, ultimately that this gets you more into your Bible and shows you that, there's a lot more going on there than sometimes we realize, and some things that we might have read the same way 100 times. Now I hope you read them in a different light, and I hope it really enriches your Bible study. And anyway, I hope that again that this blesses you. Leave a comment if there's something you'd like to see. I love comments. I've said this before. Unless you're a weirdo, I will answer you. Okay, I'll try to get back to you, or at least in some way or another. I love comments. They encourage me. If there's a video you'd like to see in the future, please comment below. Let me know. If there's something you're looking for in particular, reach out. Feel free to reach out. Again, the benefit of a small channel is that I do answer your messages. And your voice is heard. I hear it. So anyway, with all that being said, God bless you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day in Jesus. Bye.